Hello everyone, this is Turin here, and today guys I'm here with another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this game I'm going to be playing the Dwarves led by the High King Thorgrim, and I'm going to be facing off against the Warriors of Chaos, who do look to have 2 Hell Cannons and a bunch of Chaos Chariots, so always a good time for the Dwarves. Let's jump right into the army composition and have some fun. So in the front line I actually decided to kind of mix it up a little bit. I've been having a lot of fun using Ironbreaker builds and then just using High King Thorgrim and kind of saturating those Ironbreakers with Miners to give you a little bit of AP. And granted, Miners have very poor combat stats generally speaking, but when you mix in the Runesmith with his augmentations, and let's go ahead and take a look at those just for the record, he does give them the Master Rune of Stromny Redbeard, which gives them 8 melee attack. So on top of that, and getting the armor piercing damage from the Forge Fire here, they also do get additional damage from High King Thorgrim, or I shouldn't say damage per se, but melee attack. So with all that kind of taken into account, they can become pretty decent units. So Ironbreakers in the front line mixed in with some Miners. I do also have the Nordgrimling's Ironbreakers here, are just an absolute beast. And honestly, even against matchups where you need a lot of AP, I think that Nordgrimling's Ironbreakers are a pretty good choice. They just have such good stats with 83 melee defense, and when buffed, they do have 61 melee attack right now. So pretty good stuff. Aside from that, I do have more Ironbreakers on the flank. In the back, I do have some Miners and Auxiliary. The Grumbling Guard, of course, being a staple. High King Thorgrim with his Great Book of Grudges, 2 Runesmiths, actually I think 3 total. So only one of them has like the full kit. The other 2 Runesmiths I kind of just used to get that Rune of Wrath and Ruin, use them to kind of like intercept chariots and kind of block them up and things like that, but for the most part I think they're a pretty good pick. I do also have an additional group of Longbeards with great opens in the back, and of course a group of Slayers who, obviously it's not always fun using Slayers to chase down chariots and things like that, but just having anti-large and these unbreakable units and that mobility for the Dwarves is always useful. So I mean 40 move speed is mobile for the Dwarves aside from Gyrocopters. So for my opponent's army, he does have 2 Hell Cannons over here hidden in the brush. He has a pretty traditional army other than that. He actually does have a Chaos Lord on a Dragon, which I actually haven't seen in quite some time. He does have an Exalted Hero with the Mark of Khorne, and for any of you guys that don't know what that does, let's go ahead and take a look here. So the Mark of Khorne gives him 8 melee attack, 8% charge bonus, 12% weapon damage, and immunity to psychology. And he also does have the Blasted Standard, so units in a kind of a radius around him do get 6 missile parry with when they have shields. So I guess it's pretty much just for himself. He gets a little bit of missile parry, and his Chaos Lord will as well, as they both have shields. For his infantry corps, he has mostly Chaos Marauders, and the Ironbreakers are actually really good against Chaos Marauders because the blasting charges just tear these guys to shreds. So he does have Chaos Marauders in the front line mixed in with Chaos Warriors, somewhat similar to what I did, just having like cheap infantry saturated with a little bit higher quality infantry. In the back though, this is definitely going to be the hardest thing for me to deal with, is the 2 Gorby's Chariots. So these things are pretty much MVPs against the Dwarves, and from my experience playing against Dwarves, like I always bring like 1 or 2 of these at least. They just rack up a ton of kills. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get rolling. So this game has a little bit of posturing, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. He's like relocating his siege equipment, and I'm kind of just posturing up in the forest, getting my forces ready to march out. And the build I'm using right now is more of like an aggressive DAWI build. You don't really like sit in corner camp and things like that because it doesn't have any ranged. So I kind of wanted to just really experiment with these type of builds. One thing I was running into is I was killing their infantry corps, but then they were just kiting me with missiles and things. But for the most part, it actually seems to be working out pretty well, and it's a lot of fun. So right now you can see I'm just kind of marching into the Hell and the Brimstone here. The 2 Hell Cannons are just kind of shooting in, and unfortunately there's nothing I can do about it really. Had I had like a cannon or something, I could have traded, but still I really wanted to advance and just be the aggressor here. So I am advancing right now with my main force, and thankfully I haven't taken too much damage. He does make a direct hit right there against those Grumbling Guard. That's actually the first one that I had taken, and considering he invested a massive amount of resources in these things, I was very happy about that. So you guys probably noticed that initially I had my line was very like compact because I wanted to get High King Thorgrim's buff, but when I saw 2 Hell Cannons, I split into spaghetti line. So that's what you should always do if you're fighting against like a build like this, is go full spaghetti. So I did send these Slayers out around the flank. I was like, hey, if my opponent comes with my Lords, I can fight him with the Slayers, but if he comes with his Lords, otherwise I'm just going to go chase down his Hell Cannons and outmaneuver these Marauders here. Granted, Marauders have 35 move speed, so not a great situation. So my opponent does come in pretty hot. He jumps on my Slayers and going to start getting some kills, but the Slayers are going to run in there and do a little bit of a decent trade, and I also do pull some Miners from Auxiliary to help intercept these Chaos Marauders. So in the front line, you can see that these satchel charges are about to go off over here. This group of Ironbreakers on the far side, and these things are just devastating to these type of lightly armored cheap infantry units. So they're coming in, blasting pretty hard, and this is definitely one of the more satisfying feelings about playing the Dwarves, is just blasting charges going off. It is so much fun. So getting in here on these guys, doing some pretty decent HP damage, and you see it'll start to add up over the course of the battle. So the Miners do engage with the Chaos Warriors, and the blasting charges just continue to wreak havoc on these guys. Also clipping the wings of these units here. You can see I am sending Runes of Wrath and Ruin, and it's really staggering the formation. And High King Thorgrim gets in here with his big pimp hammer, or pimp axe, excuse me, And, you know, him and his boys are doing a pretty good job kind of holding up this front line. In the back, though, it's a little bit more wild. There's just more blasting charges across the whole way. And that actually did really massive, just brutal damage. So I guess it does more to armor. I'm not sure. I'll have to do some testing. But my runesmith in there also using the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. But I am still taking pretty heavy fire here. And also the chariots have kind of rode through my ranks and are, you know, causing me problems. These things are very, very tough to stop for the dwarves. So, you know, but thankfully, you know, the Ironbreakers here are kind of holding them up a little bit and allowing me to get a little bit of DPS on them before they do escape. So over here on the far side, you can see the Chaos Lord did kind of, you know, get caught up in these miners. And the Mission Impossible Slayers have pushed up and around the flank and are going in the back and take out those Hell Cannons and all those other goodies. So right now, this is just a wild fight in here. The dwarves, thankfully, were able to kind of muck up these chariots a little bit to keep them from getting away and just wreaking havoc, because if you can tie them down, you can really deal with them well. You can also see Thorgrim and his throng in here doing a pretty good job fending off these Chaos Warriors, and I'm telling you guys, the Ironbreakers with their really high melee defense, and I think when that happens, he doesn't actually damage his own troops, really. I think it just kind of knocks them down, but regardless, the Ironbreakers are just a good pick in most matchups. I really like them quite a bit. Granted, there are matchups in which they can really get punished, like against factions that have heavy DPS on single target, or like a Fate of Buna, or a Cannon Fire. I got kind of lucky with the Hell Cannons that he didn't really make good hits there. Because that's really cost effective if like a Hell Cannon is able to jump onto your Ironbreakers there. So over here on the far side, you can see the Slayers have jumped on their Chaos Brethren right here and are definitely going to tear these guys to shreds. So this is going to be a really bad situation. I was so happy I was able to get back here, because that's one of the biggest punishing things about dwarves, or things that you get punished for. Like, if you had been able to tie up my Slayers and kill them, I would have been taking Hell Cannon fire for another, you know, 5 minutes before I was able to get to them. And that could have been, you know, just absolutely devastating. So thankfully, the Secret Agent dwarves were able to get back here. And, you know, that almost makes me think that, like, a group of Rangers might be worth it. Just like a Vanguard, and just use them in melee to, like, shut down Hell Cannons in this matchup. So you can see jump kicks and all kinds of gnarly stuff going in. And these miners, or excuse me, these Hell Cannon crews are definitely very, very short-lived over here. So in the back, though, my opponent still does have his chariots here, having racked up only 19 kills, actually, so pretty timid there, and he does also have the Chaos Lord. It's a wild fight, and the Rune of Wrath and Ruin perpetually going off on all the Chaos Warriors and the more elite troops, and over here you can continue to see blasting charges going off, which I'd be interested to see how much damage they do against the chariots. But Thorgrim, I was making sure to just target the chariots, because he hits incredibly hard, so he can actually kill the models, like, pretty quick, and, you know, for every model you can kill in those chariots, you're going to be reaping a pretty great benefit. So Chaos still does have a decent infantry corps left. They have, you know, a few groups of Chaos Warriors. You can also see some of these Chaos Marauders doing a decent job, but they are starting to rout off against the DAWI Resilience. And those Runesmiths and High King Thorgrim are really, really just laying a good old beating on these guys. And you can see that this Chaos Lord here does have the Filth Mace, so he is going to start, you know, causing terror issues and things like that. And unfortunately, I don't have the High King buff yet, popped yet. So not all of my troops are immune to psychology at this point. So the Chariot's riding through, and, you know, even when they're just pathing through like this, they're racking up kills. And you can see they're up to 43 here. This group is now up to 65. So just when we looked a minute ago and they were down at around 18, they've just made massive progress. So the battle is definitely strewn with the bodies of both the Dwarves and the Warriors of Chaos. Battle very, very close. And you can see it does have a bit of a force here, kind of starting to regroup. And this is definitely pretty problematic, because the Chariots and whatnot are going to ride over here. Oh, we actually get to see a little bit of a blasting charge action. So that did some okay damage. But right now I'm just kind of consolidating my forces, just trying to get a unified army here under the banner of High King Thorgrim. And we're just going to kind of push over here and finish off the last of his troops that are kind of regrouping. And, you know, the Runesmiths are very, very good in this type of situation with Rune of Wrath and Ruin, some decent combat stats, and you can also see the rest of the Ironbreakers and other troops kind of pushing in here. So my opponent doing a very, very similar thing, taking advantage of his mobility. He's just kind of picking off my scraps, which in a situation, especially when you're behind, it's always worth it. But guys, you can see this was the big turning point here. So these Slayers were able to get over here and just annihilate these two Hell Cannon crews, just leave them bare and dry. So that was huge, because imagine right now if I was marching and I was just taking Hell Cannon fire down the pipe. Granted, I would have had to march over here, and it would have been, you know, it would have been a much tougher battle. Granted, the battle is still pretty even. You can see the balance of power slightly in my favor, but my opponent still has a full health Chaos Lord, a full health Exalted Hero, and he does also have, you know, some pretty beat up chariots. So if I'm able to kill the chariots on the ground, I should be able to rout him off and just kind of end this battle here. So right now you can see the Dwarf forces are kind of mobilizing, just going after him right here, and he is picking off my Ironbreakers in the back, which is unfortunate, but there's really not much you can do, because again, the Dwarves are really punished by mobility. So I do have a Runesmith here. I actually have all three of my Runesmiths, and High King Thorgrim is in pretty much perfect shape. I do have Longbeards who have 46 leadership. The Ironbreakers here have 75 leadership. Of course, the Slayers are impervious to that. And the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers rocking a hard 81 leadership, even after, you know, all that battling. Their fatigue is still good, though. They're active, because I did have the what's it called, the Grumbling Guard for the longest time. Unfortunately, they did get picked off because my opponent wisely targeted them with the Chariots. So over here you can see he's regrouping his forces, and again the Warriors of Chaos coming out of the forest have a little bit of a secondary push coming in here. So I'm in a little bit of a tough situation. I'm definitely going to be sandwiched if my opponent times it correctly. So I'm marching in right here, and we can do a little bit of fast forwarding just so you guys don't have to watch the dwarves march around the map. So my opponent does come in here. So what I ended up doing is sending the Slayers and the Ironbreakers to intercept this group, and then this group over here is going to intercept the Chaos Warriors, who are a little bit of an easier fight. So these Ironbreakers should be able to clean these guys up. I do also, I think, have a Runesmith over here. I sent one Runesmith because a single Rune of Wrath and Rune is going to be quite strong over here. But unfortunately, the Chariots do intercept my other group. But thankfully, some of the Slayers were able to drag one of the Chariots down. And you can also see that High King Thorgrim in here is pushing. But my opponent does push through and is going to jump onto my other troops. He gets a really nice rear charge here, so taking advantage of his mobility and that big old Chaos Dragon. And man, it's so exciting that the dragons in general are going to be getting breath attacks in Total War Warhammer 2. You guys probably saw that from the announced video that they did and everything in my video as well. But anyways, we have a very wild fight in here. You can see the Slayers jumping on these guys, and you know, every attack I can get on them is definitely adding up here with that anti-large bonus from these Slayers. But Thorgrim being able to sit here, and I think he's such a good pick in this matchup and any matchup because he can't be knocked over. So even if they're cycle charging you, he's always going to retaliate. He's going to get in there with his hammer and do some pretty good work. So it's starting to look good for me because the Chariots really just got beaten down through attrition. They were incredibly low. The Slayers were poking away at them. You can also see this Chaos Lord is very, very close to breaking right now. Thorgrim and the boys, just a true resilient faction over here with the Dwarves. Their leadership is just impeccable, especially in the fourth quarter with High King Thorgrim. So we're able to push off that Chaos Lord as well as that Exalted Hero with his Mark of Khorne. Definitely a disappointment to the Skull God or to the Blood God today, but guys, we were able to do it. So very well played to my opponent. It was a super fun matchup. One of the reasons I think my opponent really struggled was because of the two Hell Cannons. Like, had he just gotten one, for example, and then, you know, invested in more infantry or another chariot or, you know, any number of other options, I think that battle would have been a lot harder. But the fact that I was able to get those Slayers around the back and really pressure those, that was pretty good. And I mean, had he kept like an Exalted Hero just chasing my Slayers, their numbers would have been so thin by the time they got over there. So just a little mistake there, but still very well played to my opponent, Diga. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and I hope you guys enjoyed that DAWI cast. Have an excellent night and take care.